What's up, guys? Mr. Shaver back with you again. It's chapter 15 time. My dogs smell meat. I know most of you just got done finished reading 14 or listening to 14. Anne-Marie's on the path. Got to take the packet to Heinrich that was not delivered by Mr. Rosen. Mama can't go. She's hurt. Anne-Marie's running through the woods, right? She's trying to think of stories she used to tell Kirsty. She's trying to distract herself. She's trying to run. She's getting there in the dark. She comes to the final spot, and she really does hear something in the woods or in the bushes right before she gets to the opening. And what do you know? 4 soldiers with guns and 2 dogs are standing right there in the path. What is she going to do? We'll see, right? I don't know. What would I do? I would probably, I don't know. I can't put myself in that situation right now. It freaks me out. But we're going to see what she does, all right? And this chapter is called My Dogs Smell Meat. Dogs now? Really? Now they even have soldier dogs? All right, here we go. Anne-Marie's mind raced. She remembered what her mother had said. If anyone stops you, you must pretend to be nothing more than a silly little girl. She stared at the soldiers. She remembered how she had stared at the others, frightened when they had stopped her on the street. Kirsty hadn't been frightened. Kirsty had been, well, nothing more than a silly little girl, angered because the soldiers had touched her hair after that afternoon. She had known nothing of danger, and the soldier had been amused by her. Anne-Marie willed herself, with all of her being, to behave as Kirsty would. "Good morning," she said carefully to the soldiers. They looked her up and down in silence. Both dogs were tense and alert. The 2 soldiers who held their leashes wore thick gloves. "What are you doing here?" one of them asked. Anne-Marie held out her basket, with a thick loaf of bread visible. "My Uncle Heinrich forgot his lunch, and I'm taking it to him. He's a fisherman." The soldiers were looking around. Their eyes glanced behind her and scanned the bushes on either side. "Are you alone?" one asked. Anne-Marie nodded. "Yes," she said. One of the dogs growled, but she noticed that both dogs were looking at the lunch basket. One soldier stepped forward. The other, and the 2 holding the dogs, remained where they were. "You came out here before daybreak just to bring lunch? Why doesn't your uncle eat fish?" What would Kirsty reply? Anne-Marie tried to giggle the way her sister might. "Uncle Heinrich doesn't even like fish," she said, laughing. "He says he sees too much of it and smells too much of it. Anyway, he wouldn't eat it raw." She made a face. "Well, I suppose he would if he were starving, but Uncle Heinrich always has bread and cheese for lunch." "Keep chattering," she told herself, as Kirsty would. A silly little girl. "I like fish," she went on. "I like it the way my mother cooks it. Sometimes she rolls it in breadcrumbs and—" The soldier reached forward and grabbed the crisp loaf of bread from the basket. He examined it carefully. Then he broke it in half, pulling the 2 halves apart into his fists. That would enrage Kirsty, she knew. "Don't!" she said angrily. "That's my Uncle Heinrich's bread. My mother baked it." The soldier ignored her. He tossed the 2 halves of loaf on the ground, one half in front of each dog. They consumed it, each snapping at the bread and gulping it so it was gone in an instant. "Have you seen anyone in the woods?" The soldier barked, the question at her. "No, only you." Anne-Marie stared at him. "What are you doing in the woods anyway? You're making me late. Uncle Heinrich's boat will leave before I get there his lunch, or what's left of his lunch." The soldier picked a wedge of cheese. He turned it over in his hand. He turned to the 3 behind him and asked them something in their own language. One of them answered "Nien" in a bored tone. Anne-Marie recognized the word. The man had replied, "No." He'd probably been asked. Anne-Marie thought, "Do you want this? Or perhaps, should I give this to the dogs?" The soldier continued to hold the cheese. He tossed it back and forth between his hands. Anne-Marie gave an exasperated sigh. "Can I go now, please?" she asked impatiently. The soldier reached for the apple. He noted its brown spots and made a face of disgust. "No meat?" he asked, glancing at the basket and the napkin that lay in the bottom. Anne-Marie gave him a withering look. "You know we don't have meat," she said innocently. Your army eats all of Denmark's meat. Please, please, she implored in her mind, don't lift the napkin. The soldier laughed. He dropped the bruised apple on the ground. One of the dogs leaned forward, pulling at the leash, sniffed the apple, and stepped back. Both dogs still looked intently at the basket, their ears alert, their mouths open. Saliva glistened on their smooth pink lips. My dogs smell meat, the soldier said. They smell squirrels in the woods, Anne-Marie responded. You should take them hunting. The soldier reached forward with the cheese in one hand, as if he were going to return it to the basket. But instead, he pulled out the flower cotton napkin. Anne-Marie froze. Your uncle has a pretty little lunch, the soldier said scornfully, crumpling the napkin around the cheese in his hand. Like a woman, he added with contempt. Then his eyes locked on the basket. He handed the cheese and napkin to the soldier beside him. Oh my God, he's going to find it. What's that? There in the bottom, he asked in a different, tense voice. What would Kirsty do? Anne-Marie stamped her foot. Suddenly, to her own surprise, she began to cry. I don't know, she said, her voice choked. My mother's going to be angry that you stopped me and made me late, and you've completely ruined my Uncle Heinrich's lunch, so now he'll be mad at me too. The dogs whined and struggled against the leashes, nosing forward to the basket. One of the soldiers muttered something in German. The soldier took out the packet. Why is this so carefully hidden? He snapped. Anne-Marie wiped her eyes on the sleeve of her sweater. It wasn't hidden any more than the napkin was. I don't know what it is. That, she realized, was true. She had no idea what was in the packet. The soldier tore the paper open while below him, on the ground, the dogs strained and snarled, pulling against their leashes. Their muscles were visible beneath the sleek, short-haired flesh. He looked inside and then glared at Anne-Marie. Stop crying, you idiot girl, he said harshly. Your stupid mother has sent your uncle a handkerchief. In Germany, the women have better things to do. They don't stay at home hemming handkerchiefs for their men. So it's like a cloth, or like a napkin, or like a handkerchief, a hanky. It's like what old men wear or have. He gestured, it's like a cloth napkin. He gestured with the folded white cloth and gave a short, caustic laugh. At least you didn't stitch flowers on it. He flung it to the ground, still half wrapped in the paper beside the apple. Dogs lunged, sniffed at it eagerly, and then subsided, disappointed again. Go on, the soldier said. He dropped the cheese and napkin back into her basket. Go on to your uncle and tell him the German soldiers enjoyed his bread. The German dogs enjoyed his bread. All of the soldiers pushed past her. One of them laughed, and they spoke to each other in their own language. In a moment they had disappeared down the path, in the direction from which Anne-Marie had just come. Quickly she picked up the apple and opened the packet with the white handkerchief inside. She put them into the basket and ran around the bend toward the harbor, where the morning sky was now bright with early sun, and some of the boat engines were starting their strident din. The Ingeborg was still there by the dock, and Uncle Heinrich was there, his light hair windblown and bright as he knelt by the nets. Anne-Marie called to him, and he came to the side, his face worried when he recognized her on the dock. She handed the basket across. Mama sent your lunch, she said, her voice quavering. But soldiers stopped me and they took your bread. She didn't dare tell him more. Heinrich glanced quickly into the basket. She could see the look of relief on his face, and knew it was because he saw the packet was there, even though it was torn open. Thank you, he said, and his relief was evident in his voice. Anne-Marie looked quickly around the familiar small boat. She could see down the passageway into the empty cabin. There was no sign of the Rosens or the others. Uncle Heinrich followed her eyes and her puzzled look. All is well, he said softly. Don't worry. Everything is all right. I wasn't sure, he said. But now, he eyed the basket in his hands. Because of you, Anne-Marie, everything's all right. You run home now and tell your mama not to worry. I'll see you this evening." He grinned at her suddenly. "They took my bread, huh?" he said. "I hope they choke on it." Alright, guys. Crazy. Right? Absolutely crazy. Anne-Marie is a beast, man. She did it. She thought she wouldn't be brave or have a time to be brave, but I think she's doing it right now. Alright, and there was a handkerchief in there. Like a napkin was inside the packet. Something special is about that napkin. And because of got it there, everything's going to be safe. Heinrich said, "Because of you, Anne-Marie, now that you got this here, everything's going to be good." And where do you think the family is? Where are they at? She couldn't see him in the boat, so that makes me think something else, too. Whew. All right, guys. We'll pick up next time.